Hello, everyone. Welcome. As you get signed in, you'll see a survey on your screen. If you could just take a second to fill it out, that would be great. And we'll get started in just a minute to allow for more people to get signed in. While we wait, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Madison Burnett. I'm a BCBA. I lead our professional development program, and I'll be supporting throughout today's webinar. In addition to that role, I work alongside other BCBAs on our clinician-led recruitment team, and I support in the effort of recruiting quality professionals to join our team. All right. Thank you so much for your participation in the survey. I'm going to leave it open just for a little bit longer. I see we're about 50-50 for new attendees versus returning, so we're thrilled to have everyone here. All right. Before we begin the webinar, I would like to tell you a little bit about Manhattan Psychology Group. We were established in 2011, and we've continued to grow our team consisting of skilled adult and child psychologists, neuropsychologists, behavior analysts, special educators, licensed social workers, and behavior interventionists. As a team, we are committed to wraparound care, which includes our wide range of services from mental health and testing to ABA and educational services. This holistic approach allows us to address various needs and challenges with compassion and care. We provide services to clients out of our Upper West Side and Long Island City offices, in home, school, and clinic-based settings, as well as through telehealth. Our team is committed to serving individuals, couples, and families of all ages in diverse settings. We're also pleased to offer these free monthly webinars for parents and professionals where we'll continue to learn and foster meaningful connections. Our vision at MPG is to create a future where individuals and their families feel supported, connected, and empowered. And our mission is to provide multidisciplinary, integrated support for individuals and their families who experience mental health, behavioral, and educational challenges. Now for some housekeeping information. For those of you seeking contact hours for this presentation, you will need to attend this presentation in its entirety with a minimum of 50 cumulative minutes in order to receive a link for the post-webinar quiz and survey following this presentation. We will be verifying your attendance by reviewing the time attended logged via Zoom and sending an email containing the link for the post-webinar survey. As of January 1st, we have started charging a nominal fee for the continuing education certificate, but this webinar is still free to attend with a $5 fee for the live contact hour certificate for New York State licensed social workers. I am going to end the poll now. We will be leaving the chat open for today's presentation. We just ask that if you have any questions for Emily, that you put them in the Q&A so we can make sure that they are seen. And now I would love to introduce our presenter. Emily Fried is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in infant, early childhood, and perinatal mental health. With advanced training in trauma, attachment, and neurodevelopmental disorders, she brings over 15 years of experience across pediatric clinics, early childhood programs, and private practice. Emily holds dual graduate degrees from Hunter College and Bank Street College of Education. She currently serves as the Healthy Steps Program Manager at Every Child Pediatrics and owns a private practice where she provides relationship-based mental health care to infants, young children, and families, as well as reflective supervision and consultation to infants and early childhood mental health providers. And now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Emily.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. So today we are going to talk about peer play psychotherapy. So, and unlocking, I apologize, I just messed up my screen. And unlocking the power of peer relationships. So, as Matt said, so I'm a clinical social worker specializing in infant, early childhood, perinatal mental health, 6. I am licensed in Colorado and New York, and so I see families and individuals from birth and adults, both in my office in Colorado, in Boulder, and also virtually for throughout the state of Colorado and across New York as well. And so today, apologize. Okay, so today we are going to talk about, as I said, peer play psychotherapy. So on our agenda, we are going to look at understanding and identifying, assessing the mental, emotional, behavioral, and developmental needs of young children. So we are primarily going to be focusing on children 2.5 or so to 5 years old, really like 3 to 5. So we're going to talk about peer play psychotherapy as part of it within a model called Relationships for Growth and Learning. The overview of therapeutically informed work with parents, teachers, and schools. We're going to explore the conceptual and theoretical framework of peer play psychotherapy, which is rooted in attachment theory. We'll look at a brief vignette of two children who I saw a number of years ago, but I do love using this vignette because there's so much wonderful information in there that just uh, exemplifies how peers can become generative change agents for each other and auxiliary therapists as well. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Peers in peer play psychotherapy attract, provoke, demand, coax, wheedle, and squeeze growth out of each other in ways that a psychotherapist cannot. Within the safe space developed in PPP, what the children do with each other, no therapist, parent, or teacher could. Within therapeutic conditions, the children become instruments of positive learning and growth for their friends and for themselves. And what I about this part is it really does, or this quote shows that really what peers can do for each other, a child alone in the room with a calm and regulated therapist is not going to experience the same interactions. They're not going to be able to work through the same challenges. And peer play psychotherapy's roots are really grounded in attachment theory, psychodynamic and psychoanalytic play therapy, developmental psychology, and reflective practice, which is really also a crucial role as well. And it's not a skills group. There's no set agenda for each session, and it's really following children's leads. So, and in young children, peers in psychotherapy can be utilized as this incentive for growth, and in the right conditions, become those generative change agents. And our ultimate goal today is to provide an overview of how this process comes to life through peer play psychotherapy. So I just wanted to acknowledge, Dr. Rebecca Shumanshanuk, a developmental psychologist and clinical social worker in New York. She was a leader in early childhood mental health and developmental psychology. She was a pioneer of peer play psychotherapy and reflective supervision. So I was very fortunate to have her as my mentor. A lot of information really comes from her work developing the program Relationships for Growth and Learning. She was the founding director of the Institute for Infants, Children, and Families as part of the Child Development Center at the Jewish Board Family Children Services in New York, where she did develop the Relationships for Growth and Learning program and peer play psychotherapy. She was also a longtime board member of 0 to 3 Network, of 0 to 3, a founding board member of the New York 0 to 3 Network, and a founding member of the Harris Foundation's Professional Development Network. And Relationships for Growth and Learning that we're going to talk a little bit about actually was one of the first 3 programs within the Harris Foundation's Professional Development Network. So, I'm sorry, I don't know why this is blocking. I apologize. I'm not sure why that is there and blocking my screen. So infant early childhood mental health is really the underpinnings of peer play psychotherapy. So why are we focusing on early childhood? So infant early childhood mental health integrates developmental psychology, attachment theory, psychoanalytic and psychodynamic principles, neuroscience, and genetics to inform prevention and treatment. In the first 5 years of life are marked by the most rapid growth in brain development, and it's therefore the most critical time for learning. Self-regulation, the ability to manage emotions and behaviors also develops in the context of attachment relationships. It's well documented in over decades of research on neuroscience and developing brain that the first 5 years are marked by the most growth and development, and the greatest ability to impact and address early problems in development happens before 5 years of age. Harvard Center for the Developing Child, among others, has done some incredible research on this, and I do recommend checking out some of their learning materials on their website. So behavior problems in individual children are also often rooted in relationships with important adults in their lives. So John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, brings into discussion the idea of the internal working models, which are also known as internal representations. And these are the representation systems underlying attachment and the foundation for secure attachment development in all future relationships. Internal working models support secure attachment development in the context of sensitive and responsive caregiving relationships, and most notably at times of stress. So Dr. Jack Shonkoff at Harvard Center for Developing Child has done incredible research on the stress continuum. So this is positive stress, tolerable stress, toxic stress. And so what I want to focus on is positive and tolerable stress both arise in the context of these loving contingent responsive relationships with a primary caregiver. They induce a stress response, a physiological stress response, but because of that loving contingent responsive caregiving relationship, children are able to recover and actually utilize these experiences as growth promoting. Internal representations also allow for the development of the use of attachment figure as a secure base, which provides children with a sense of safety and allowing for exploration of the world and other relationships. So keeping in mind behavior problems in individual children are often rooted in relationships with the important adults in their lives. We really want to shift the focus from simply managing challenging behaviors to healing relationships and providing a safe holding environment to then address these behaviors. So peer relationships in preschool are associated with self-regulation, increased social competence, and better academic performance. Infants are born with a desire for connection, most notably with their parent or caregiver, and over time this evolves to include the desire for peer relationships. Humans are innately social beings, and for the most part, all children want to interact with others. And by 3 years old, a typically developing child can engage in cooperative play and have the capacity to build stable peer relationships. And also around 3 to 4 years old, children's understanding of emotions begins to correspond with the development of empathic behavior, which in turn also becomes associated with more positive peer relationships. And on the other side, preschool-age children with poor emotional regulation abilities are more likely to be rejected by peers and engage in solitary play activities. Peer relational activities at this age are also associated with externalizing and internalizing problems in adolescence. So this brings us to the importance of conceptualizing the establishment of healthy peer relationships as an essential developmental stage in preschool-age children. So through our exploration of peer play psychotherapy, we're going to keep returning to the sentiment that the presence of peers is an incentive for emotional growth, as well as the pivotal role that mentalization plays in this process. And while young children truly need attachment relationships with primary caregivers, peer relationships can also become critical attachment relationships in supporting affect regulation with internalizing of interactions in the playroom, which then become generalized patterns affecting behavior in the classroom and at home. And I'm just going to try to remove this. I'm not sure why this won't go away, so I do apologize again. So the emotional foundations of school readiness. Children enter preschool with the expectation that they should be able to share, make friends, play, listen to teachers, and easily learn to follow the classroom routine without being disruptive or dysregulated. In 1992, 0 to 3, the National Center for Infant, Toddlers, Families published a series of papers that identified 7 indicators of school readiness. So young children who possess these 7 capacities tend to succeed in school, both socially and academically. They're better able to follow directions and routines of the classroom that may be different from routines at home. And they have an increased ability to communicate effectively with teachers and peers, problem solve. They have increased motivation and curiosity, and have a lower rate of preschool suspension and expulsion, which we will go into because that's a very important piece of this. Um, so just taking a quick peek at these 7 characteristics. Confidence is that sense of control, master one's body, behavior, and the world. And the child sense that he or she is more likely than not to succeed at they're what they undertake, and that adults around them will be helpful. Curiosity is the sense that finding out about things is positive and leads to pleasure. Intentionality is this desire and capacity to have an effect to act on that desire with persistence, and a characteristic that's clearly related to social competence and being effective. Self-control is the ability to modulate and control actions in age-appropriate ways. Relatedness, the ability to engage with others based on the sense of being understood by others and understanding others. Capacity to communicate, the desire and ability to exchange ideas, feelings, concepts with others, a characteristic that's related to a sense of trust in others and a sense of pleasure in engaging with other people, including adults. And cooperativeness, which is the ability to balance one's own needs with those of others in a group activity. So, okay, so thinking about the emotional foundations of school readiness that we just reviewed, we're going to just take a quick look at some statistics. So these were taken from the 2022 to 2023 National Survey of Children's Health, which is an annual parent report survey conducted by HRSA at the national level. And so, as we know, it's well documented that the first 5 years of life are marked by the most growth, and the greatest ability to affect social, emotional, and school readiness is within these years. So almost a third of US children arrive in kindergarten unready to learn. So waiting until 5 years old to address problems actually misses this critical time to make improvements in their lives and those in their families, as well as schools and society as a whole. So as you can see, for school readiness, social emotional development and self-regulation are the 2 that are really focusing on, and overall school readiness. So needing support for social emotional development, 6.1%, 9.9% for self-regulation, need support, and for overall school readiness in all domains of school readiness, which also includes academic, health, all of these components, all the components that we also just discussed, is at 8.4%. And so then also there's a lot of children who are emerging, and those children also do benefit from support. It's not only the children who have already reached a clinical level of need. So identifying this need for support again, looking at the mental, emotional development and behavioral problems. So these that MEDB considered. So this from the same 2022 to 2023 survey, it was found that 15.7% of children have one or more reported mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral problem. 15.7% is, and this is for children 3 to 5 years old, is a pretty significant statistic. And so beyond the attributes of school readiness, social emotional development, and self-regulation, we also really want to consider these other factors, the mental, emotional, developmental, and behavioral concerns, especially when they've reached the clinical and diagnostic level, but also when they're emerging and they are almost at that level. So research has overwhelmingly established that if children with social behavioral problems are not treated or effectively prevented in early childhood, they constitute significant risk factors for later psychopathology, academic failures, and even real poor physical health outcomes. Um, Over the years, there's been increasing number of young children who are manifesting behavioral problems, and some of these behaviors can be severe enough to warrant removal from preschool programs, which set into motion a cascade of negative experiences. So Walter Gilliam in 2005 released the first nationally representative study documenting the extent of this problem, where it found that preschool-age children are 3 times more likely to get expelled than K through 12. It also highlighted that Black children, most notably Black boys, are suspended and expelled at a much higher rate than their counterparts. And the other piece is most data available about preschool suspension and expulsion are specifically for public preschool program, which the problem with this is it doesn't consider the fact that many 3 and 4-year-olds attend private preschool programs, which are not required to report those suspensions. And it also brings in this idea of what we call it the push out phenomenon, that children are essentially pushed out of their programs through this idea of the back door. Where they are where preschool programs can make it difficult for parents to bring their children to school. They are sent home, which then the school can say, oh, well, the parent signed them out or picked them up when they get a phone call saying you have to pick up your child. But if the parent signs them out, it looks like the parent signed them out and picked them up, not that they were sent home. And for some preschools, they will say, well, your child can't handle a full day. We can only do a partial day. We can only do this amount of time, or you have to have a parent present at all times in the building. Really, these things make it impossible for children to continue attending these schools. So that's where this push out phenomenon comes from. So what do we do with this information? Children are typically identified once there's concerns or they've reached a level of clinical impairment. So we're going to look at relationships for growth and learning, which is a model of care that simultaneously embodies prevention and intervention measures for young children. So Peer Play Psychotherapy this model of Peer Play Psychotherapy was developed within this program, Relationships for Growth and Learning. The mission is to support all children so they can learn, socialize, and thrive in school. And so what Relationships for Growth and Learning, it was developed at the Jewish Board of Family Children's Services in New York. It brings mental health consultation into preschool programs with constant on-site availability of this early childhood mental health professional, where on-site peer play psychotherapy is offered as an extension of school services. So it becomes part of program, and which is less threatening for families to access. It also, because there's the mental health consultation for all staff, children, and families, everyone is provided that extra layer of support. Observational screening of all children is one of the most important pieces of this because the teachers are able to observe children in their classroom. They're provided this reflective consultation where they can discuss identified children with the mental health provider on site. And also, the mental health provider does full observational screenings of all children in the classroom. So essentially, for the first month of school each year, they are fly on the wall in the classroom, observing children, observing interactions with children and teachers, and children with their peers, and how they're learning, their behavior, all different aspects. And so just a very brief history. Relationships for Growth and Learning came out of the therapeutic nursery group at JBFCS, at the Child Development Center, when they developed this new mental health consultation program in 1967. And it also brings in this history as an advanced training program. So the vast majority of therapists were postgraduate social workers, psychologists, mental health counselors, pretty much the whole range of mental health providers, but very often primarily social work. And so In so there was also 20 years of university-based research to show effectiveness of this program. From 1999 to 2004, the research was through Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health, which was a program funded by ACS in New York, along with Head Start, because they were seeing the effectiveness that this program was having in these public preschools and Head Start centers around New York. And 2010 to 2020, there was research through the Center for Attachment Research at the New School, which was philanthropically funded, and included a follow-up study that began in 2016, with the early development of a manual and also learning collaborative. Okay, so advantages to peer play psychotherapy occurring in preschools. Sorry, trying to remove this thing, but I can't. So there is this shift from pathology and problem-centered model to a prevention model with the potential to strengthen school readiness. It reduces barriers and obstacles for parents trying to access therapeutic services for their children. There's this potential to reach the highest risk and most underserved children as well. So intervention is also compatible with a child's natural environment, which brings in that the developmental ecological perspective as well. So grounded in that developmental ecological perspective. So it's this idea that the interventions are most effective when occurring in a child's natural environment and at an appropriate developmental level. Can also children can transfer their gains into that they receive in peer play psychotherapy into the classroom. So attendance is also a wonderful thing that when it occurs in schools, children are almost always present. And so you don't have to worry about low attendance or being absent, and they truly get the most out of this program. It also removes the stigma of therapy because it's just for children, they're going to a play group. And for parents, it's part of the school. And so it really removes that. They're not going to a mental health center. They're not going to a therapist's office. So it really does remove that stigma. The therapist also becomes a familiar person by the time sessions begin because they're seen in the classroom and all around the center. And the infant, early childhood mental health consultation opportunities for all teachers and staff. And the best part of it, peers are in abundance. They are everywhere. So I'm going to just briefly touch upon these next few slides of the therapeutically informed collaboration with teachers and schools. So looking at the consultative stance, which is essentially the consultant's way of being, and is based on the relationship-based psychotherapeutic idea of a parallel process. So it's the sharing of curiosity, the authentic consideration of all perspectives, collaboration with developmental therapists and special educators as well. Within the RFG model, within the learning model, there's open communication, respect, mutuality, and removal of hierarchies between roles. It also brings in this idea of reflective consultation, that the teachers are provided this constant opportunity. They have team meetings with the consultant and therapists, where they're provided this space to be the expert on their classroom while also having this opportunity to reflect on what might be happening with the children and also how it's impacting them and their relationship with children, which then also transforms the care when children are participating in peer play psychotherapy as well. And you can adapt this for community and mental health centers and private practice with more of that planned outreach and collaboration. Okay, so thinking about therapeutically informed collaboration with parents. It's this idea, and this is really across the board, regardless if they're in preschool setting or private practice or mental health centers. it's this open communication, respect, and mutuality, understanding that of the benevolent parent. Parents want what's best for their children. Sometimes they need support in that. But it's always really important that they want what's best, to recognize that they want what's best for their children, and also that, that they love their children and they know their children best is the other big piece. They are the expert on their child and utilizing that. So respect for that parental expertise of their child, the sharing of curiosity, wondering together, not making that quick judgment of this is why your child's behavior is this way, but sharing that curiosity of, I wonder what's happening. It's this flexibility of meeting with parents. So you have flexibility in this. If they're at the daycare center or preschool, you can catch them at pickup or drop off. I remember when I was at Goddard Riverside on the Upper West Side, I would walk with parents to the subway. I once took the subway with a parent because that to work with them, and then took it back because that was where I was able to connect with them. In private practice, you schedule more planned reach with parents and have ongoing check-ins with them, but also trying to do that as well in any setting is helpful. This There's also the ability to provide individual or dyadic therapy, especially when children start to recreate traumatic memories through play and they're trying to gain mastery while beginning the healing process in the group. You can also help healing. You can also provide that space for healing for parents and the child together, which is paramount. And then there's also the opportunity for parent coaching. So you can help them utilize the tools that their child is gaining in playgroup into at home. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for one moment because I want to get rid of this. Oh, nope, it won't let me get rid of it. So I apologize again. Okay, so monitoring progress. So obviously this is not an extensive list of diagnostic tools. There are many, and these are also, they're not diagnostic tools. Sorry, extensive list of screenings. And I really want to note, these are not diagnostic tools. They're behavioral mental health screenings. So DECA-C is the one that I use most often. So it's the Devereux Early Childhood Assessment, the clinical version. So it is meant for mental health clinicians, but there is a parent and teacher form. There's also rater comparison. And so there's significant scales that compare the scores between parent to parent and parent to teacher, as well as pre and post test comparison. So you can really see a child's progress over time, but also it's the parent's experience of the child's progress is really what it looks at, as well as the teacher's experience of the child's progress. And that's why it's good to do parent if you have two parents or caregivers. By the way, I use parent to describe any primary caregiver. You're way to just quickly go through, talk about that. So the strengths and difficulties questionnaire as well. So this looks at emotional symptoms, conduct problems, hyperactivity, peer problems, prosocial behaviors, the preschool anxiety scales, which has also separate screenings for parent report and teacher report. The PSI, the Parent Stress Index, the few that is only parent report. There is no teacher report for the PSI. But it looks at three major domains of stress for parents, which is child characteristics, parent characteristics, and situational and demographic life stress. The PSC, the Pediatric Symptom Checklist, there's a few different forms of it. There's the full form, the 35 question. There's the PSC 17. And then there's also a preschool PSC for ages 1.5 to 5.5. And so the PSC is also only parent report. There is no teacher report. And then the CBCL, the Child Behavior Checklist, which is parent report, but then there's the complementary report for teachers and daycare providers, the CTRF, which, by the way, is only completed by daycare providers or teachers who see at least the child in a group of at least 4. So it can't be a one-to-one. It's not a in-home daycare provider who just watches 2 children. It really has to be a minimum of 4. So the only those screenings that are only parent report are the PSI and the PSC. So the Parent Trust Index and the Pediatric Symptom Checklist. All of the rest, you can really look at both parent and teacher, the progress of a child in the eyes of both parents and teachers. Okay, so now looking at playgroup formation. And so this is the process. Oh, and my thing got all messed up. I apologize. Okay, so this is the process of peer playgroup formation within the RFG model. So it's important to note that this can be also and has been adapted to community mental health and private practice. It just looks a little bit different because we don't do the class as much of the classroom observation. You can, as long as you have the permission, obviously, from parent and teachers and the director of programs to come into the classroom. But it starts with the early childhood mental health consultation with teachers. They start to identify children in their classroom who are struggling, and then they consult with the therapist or consultant, who then comes in and does those classroom observations. And remember, this is the observational screening for all children. So then we identify and assess the mental, emotional, behavioral, and developmental concerns for children. And so this is through standardized screenings. And also then if we need to see if they have reached a diagnostic level of concern, we use the DC 0 to 5, which is the diagnostic classification of mental health and developmental disorders of infancy and early childhood for children birth to 5. There is a crosswalk for the DC 0 to 5 to the DSM, which obviously is important when you need to have a diagnosis for any insurance purposes. So once children are identified, there's this outreach to parents and meeting with them to see what their concerns are, if they have concerns, talking about what you are seeing, what the teacher is experiencing, what you are seeing in the classroom, and hopefully getting their consent to enroll their child in Peer Play Psychotherapy. So this is one of the most important pieces, is grouping children with contrasting styles. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide, but we don't group children with all the same challenges. So you're not going to put 3 children who are dysregulated in the same group, or 3 children with potential ADHD in the same group, or 3 children with anxiety or any internalizing behaviors, selective mutism. Like you're not putting these children in the same group. You're taking essentially one of each and combining them together, because we really want to utilize the strengths of each child to support every child's challenges. And then we have this ongoing collaboration with parents and teachers. And this is just constant and frequent and ongoing. So playgroup formation. So peer play psychotherapy embedded in preschools in the RFGL model, and then also looking at peer play psychotherapy in community mental health practices, because there is some overlap. And so the biggest piece of overlap is most play groups are 2 to 4 children to one therapist, ideally 3 to 4, but sometimes 2 children actually work really well together as a group. And that is actually what we're going to talk about in the vignette as well, that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so the other big pieces are like just the timing, the 2 sessions per week in the RFGL model, which is possible because they're there, versus if they have to come into an office, it's 1 session per week. Then looking at the duration. So in the RFG model, because they're in the schools, it's usually for the full school year, but sometimes for an additional year if they are still there. And the duration is also dependent on multiple factors for if they are in the community mental health center. So in the preschool model, it's also the on-site identification. So children are identified by teachers or therapists in the classroom. There's observation, and then therapist outreaches parents, while a community mental health and private practice, children are usually referred by schools, agencies, pediatricians, parents, or self-referral. And then this idea of an open group versus closed group. In the preschool model, you actually are able to have more of a closed group because you want, essentially, because of the relationships that are built over time, you want it to be the same children together. Ideally, this is the same in private practice and community mental health. The problem is between costs, insurance, all of these other factors that come in, and child availability, family availability, moving. There are so many different factors. Children doing well, parents wanting to stop, some parents wanting to continue. So children will come in and out of group as needed. So now that we have formed our group, we're going to prepare the playroom. So toys and materials are selected to provide children with opportunities for relatedness and interaction, to engage in solitary and cooperative play, and telling of their stories symbolically and concretely. So it's returning to this idea of psychodynamic and psychoanalytic play therapy, which explore the themes that arise, both literal and symbolic. So we're looking at little world toys like doll houses, animal figures. Then there's the dress-up clothes, pillows, blankets, scarves, things that they can create out of. I've had kids use blankets to create forts and houses, to create all different types of things, really using their imagination. Large boxes and quiet enclosures. This is a really amazing one because children sometimes need to kind of separate themselves. They need to utilize their tools for regulation. Sometimes it's hiding and it turns into a game. Sometimes it's for self-regulation. Sometimes there's pieces that become co-created meaning and rituals, which we're about to get into. So the 16 enabling agents help peers enable other young children to blossom. So these 16 enabling agents are the reasons that peer play psychotherapy playgroups facilitated by an attuned adult are developmentally helpful to young children and have been identified as these enabling agents. Since we're limited in time, I'm just going to review a few of these enabling agents, which I've highlighted in blue. But I also want to note that it will become abundantly clear that there's a lot of overlap between them. Oh, I'm sorry. So the first one that we're going to look at is enabler 1, relationship and basic safety. So our one rule is that people and things need to always be safe. So this is a spoken and unspoken rule that's really continuously reinforced by the therapist. There aren't many rules in the playroom. There's not a rule that we have to share. There's not that we have to take turns. Really that everyone and everything needs to be safe. So as part of relationship basic safety, we're looking at the therapist as a secure attachment figure. And so by no means is the therapist a replacement for the parent as a child's primary secure attachment figure. The primary goal for the therapist is to help each child feel safe and secure through the development of an emotionally responsive relationship. So the therapist's commitment to promoting feelings of safety and security serves as a catalyst to the development of secure attachment representations. So this brings us back to the idea of Bowlby's internal working models or internal representations. So while a child's attachment security is primarily formed through interactions and the relationship with the primary caregiver in that first year of life, the internal working models can also still be influenced by external attachment figures. So the therapist's commitment to establishing a relationship with each individual child and the group as a whole. So research, and they also, the acknowledgement and acceptance and appreciation of each child's emotional experience and affective states. I think this is one of the most important points as well, is that the therapist acknowledges, accepts, and appreciates each child's emotional experiences and affective states. Research on mentalization has taught us that secure attachments allow for the emergence of mentalizing and the capacity for mentalizing as an indicator of secure attachment. And so Pierre his work on mentalization talks about this enhancing a sense of being known. So there's a quote that I love in the handbook of mentalization-based treatment where it writes, In this way, secure attachment establishes a robust sense of an agentive self, which can later be used as the basis for understanding others' mental states through a process that's described as one of simulation, projecting oneself into the mental state of the other. And so then the other piece is setting limits on behavior without expressing disapproval, communicate the therapist's dedication to physical and psychological safety, which also reaffirms the therapist's commitment to each child's emerging sense of self. So peer play psychotherapy is a responsive, modifiable family-like system. And so I wonder, in the absence of a group member, I wonder what Abby would think if she were here. This reinforces the irreplaceable role that each child has in the group. The I wonder statements play a wonderful role in helping children feel that irreplaceable role that they each have. So peer play psychotherapy as this responsive family-like system. So small interactive playgroup treatment offers a symbolic and actual opportunity for membership in an intense and evocative family-like system that builds its own shared meetings within the context of the larger classroom and school community. So through peer play psychotherapy, children come to experience themselves as intrinsic parts and significant modifiers of a responsive system. So the group provides a venue for children to rework challenges within their own family systems, their emotions, and their roles. So as infants are born into a family, they have tremendous effect on each family member and on the system as a whole. This impact leads to change and growth in each child, sibling, parent, and caregiver. And similar to that of their own family, within the peer play psychotherapy process, children experience strength and weakness in relationships while also experiencing a dynamic impact on everyone else and on the playgroup as a whole. And so it comes this idea that they come to feel felt. So when children are often also in competition with each other for attention and admiration of the therapist, similar to siblings coming to competition for attention and admiration of parents. They come to see the therapist's commitment to keeping them all safe by being fair, but also different in the response to each child, according to each child's need. It's not a one size fits all. Not each child does not need the same thing. And one of the most important things is for the therapist to really communicate their understanding of each child's needs, each child's intentions and expectations as well. And so through this process, children experience their emotional needs as being felt, heard, and respected. So this is one of my favorite pieces as well in thinking about the responsive modifiable family-like system. Just like in typical families, just like in typical family systems, each child discovers themselves. Each I grows in the context of meaningful other I's as part of the we. So it's within this process that children begin to deepen their capacities for reliable and secure attachments. So that each I grows in the context of other meaningful I's and is part of the we. Is the part of this group together. They are each growing individually, but in the context of their relationship with each individual child as well, and each individual peer, and with the therapist, all within the context of this whole. So going back to the I wonder statement that I had mentioned before, it also conveys that the therapist is engaged with thinking about and holding each child in mind and communicating the irreplaceable role each child has in the group. So while reinforcing the play group as a responsive family-like system, the I wonder statements also support each child's development of object constancy and provides this model of being reflective about themselves and about others, and the impact that they and others have on the group as a whole and on them as individuals. So looking at the co-creation of meaning through shared activity, ritual, play, history, and narrative. So think about remember when. So the co-creation of meeting rituals support a sense of belonging among playgroup members and with the group as a whole, they increase the sense of safety and security as an important member of the group and emerge from interactive activities that occur and evolve over time that provide the sense of group cohesion and of belonging, similar to that of that responsive modifiable family-like system that we just discussed. The words remember or remember when support the metacognitive process or the thinking about thinking that emerges for many children in the group as they internalize the therapist and their peers, furthering the process for reflective functioning. Like a very popular shared ritual that occurs over time, children running ahead of the therapist, closing the door before they can get into the room, pretending to lock the therapist out. Instead of looking at this as oppositional behavior, looking at it really as a shared ritual and that group cohesion that's occurring. So thinking about this holding environment. So Winnicott uses the phrase holding environment used to describe environment created within the confines of a safe and secure relationship where all emotions and experiences are contained, accepted, and understood. In this context, it refers to the importance of the therapist present and how the therapist is. So the therapist's ability to tolerate and contain the child's emotional and affective bodily states or distress. So with this, I want to note that the word contain doesn't refer to the therapist's attempts to control the child's emotions, nor does it mean the therapist seeks to eliminate the emotion. Refers to the containing refers to the therapist's ability to act as a vessel for big and challenging emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them or falling apart. So this helps the child make sense of and learn to manage their experiences. So concurrently, the therapist's emotional presence while physically keeping the child safe facilitates co-regulation. The child's then able to learn to regulate their own emotions. And this process allows a therapist to act as a secure attachment figure and in turn lays a foundation for that co-creation of meaning and the development of children as auxiliary therapists, which we're going to discuss. And we're going to go into more detail about the co-creation and meeting and development of auxiliary therapists in a moment when we discuss the case vignette. So looking at mismatch negotiation and dedication to repair, what can we do to fix this? Children reflect on the therapist's past efforts include each child's needs and desires to form a plan and resolve conflict, and then develop such solutions for themselves. So this is a very commonly used ratio. It was developed by Edtronics Research in the still face paradigm, which dates back to 1972, which says 30% of the time, a parent, an infant, or caregiver, an infant, or two people in a relationship, a teacher to a child, peer to peer, 30% of the time, the initial response is a match. 70% of the time is a mismatch. One of my quotes, as long as there is an opportunity for repair, mismatch in 70% of interactions is not only typical, but conducive to positive and healthy development and relationships. So prior to this revolutionary study of the self-face paradigm, attachment theorists primarily focused on mother's behavior in response to the infant. It wasn't considered the infant's active role in these exchanges. So what was found is that securely attached dyads only initially matched 30% of the time, but was more important than the matching was the actual repair that occurred after the mismatch. And so this also transforms into the playroom. So and I know we are running out of time soon. So mismatch negotiation and dedication to repair. We need mismatch because without it, we can't experience repair. So the playroom is an open but carefully contained space for a wide range of emotions, affective states, and play, often resulting in countless ruptures. The contain refers to the therapist's ability to let the big emotions without trying to control them or becoming dysregulated. The therapist model strategies for negotiation and repair while each child's needs are heard, communicated, represented. And each child through this process experiences the therapist's caring attunement. So the therapist also isn't only negotiating mismatches between the children, but there are times when the emotions present in the room provoke a strong response from the therapist. We're all human. And this point exemplifies the importance of that reflective practice. And so through negotiation and the dedication to repair, each child experiences the caring attunement of the therapist. So children observe and internalize interventions, learn to listen and tolerate, empathize, and later communicate and negotiate, and turn these experiences into moments of shared meaning. So working together through mismatch and repair provides this experience of knowing that we will get through this. And an example, there's also, we never tell child to share a toy. Two children want the truck. We say, you both want this truck. I wonder what we can do. And it really helps children develop those abilities for repair because they've internalized the therapist's interventions. So this brings us to step back, look, linger, and marvel. So to get to this place, the therapist empathically, emphatically represents the perspectives of each child until they're able to do it themselves. And so the therapist slows down, observes, thinks deeply about interactions in real time, recognizes each child's amazing potential and their abilities, and marvel in the capacities to utilize the tools that they have essentially unconsciously acquired, intervening non-verbally, unless a verbal intervention is required, but then making statements such as, both of you want this car. What can we do to work this out? Or how can we do this? Or what can we do to fix the situation? And it provides children with the space to facilitate the developmental, relational, and emotional growth. We don't have much time to go through this case vignette, so I do apologize, but I will quickly just address that. So Simon and Samantha, Simon had, so they were in a group together that started with 4 children. It ended up with 2 of them after the other 2 children graduated. We decided that having the 2 of them together would be actually beneficial without adding children because of the dynamics that were growing. Simon had a sensory processing disorder, was essentially, he was a twin. He was deemed the bad twin. He was pushed out of his previous preschool. And his autonomic nervous system led to him experiencing sensory input as overwhelming and acting in ways to protect himself and calm his nervous system. So compulsive behavior, self-harming behavior, also harm to others was really a function of his parasympathetic nervous system in response to this unpredictability of other people, including when they would come too close to his body. So, and Samantha was experiencing pretty severe separation anxiety. She would cry every day for hours on end, no behavior problems at home. And so parents were surprised when they learned of this problem at school. So over the course of treatment, Simon's strong desire to engage with peers was evident, but they often rejected him due to his dysregulated behavior. And it was evident that Samantha did not like him. She was irritated by his tantrums, ignored his attempts to engage, but she observed my interventions with Simon, including labeling emotions with a feeling chart, utilizing self-regulations that I got from his occupational therapist. That's really engaging that team effort. And she realized that in order to expand her play scheme, she would have to include him. However, an important therapist intervention in PPP is to not intervene, but to step back, linger, marvel. So the therapist also explains intention behind behaviors, helping children explain why they might not want to play with another child. And so Samantha actually started doing this with Simon. And so, but over time, she began to understand his positive intentions that were masked by dysregulated behaviors. And while she didn't always tolerate it, she started accepting him as a playmate and using also face art to reflect on his affective experiences. Very quickly, the evolution of the Simon monster. After about a year, Simon looked up at a clock that he had broken months prior and said, I broke that. I was really, really angry and I broke the clock. He was no longer distracted by the internal dysregulation reactivity to sensory stimuli. So he was able to acquire the language to describe these emotions. But also around the same time, the Simon monster developed. It began with him really aggressively dumping toys, knocking over chairs, growling at Samantha and me. Very, very aggressive. It was essentially this internal monster that he felt inside of him. And this is where that psychoanalytic play therapy comes in and really understanding the themes. But about 3 months later, the Simon monster returned, making large controlled movements, knocking over chairs, dumping toys, rather than aggressively like he had in the past. And Samantha started responding in a way to actually protect me as a therapist. She started narrowing behaviors. She started labeling his emotions. He's mad. And I explained, wow, Simon has really learned to control this monster. So then they generated this ritual with a new version of the Simon monster where they would run ahead of me into the playroom for every session, hid behind the curtain of the puppet show, and joyously conspiring together to playfully attack me. So this symbolic internal representation turned into a shared ritual. So on their final session, when it was time for me to graduate from the program and leave, the last session, they dumped out all of the toys. And they said, it will take you forever to clean up. So they used their increasingly resourceful relationship, which enabled them to work together to impart affection, distress, and anger about my leaving. And they both showed amazing, amazing gains after completion. So peers as generative change agents, we left, and I want to give a chance if anyone has questions, but looking at mentalization as an appropriate developmental capacity for preschool children. And so it is the core component that encompasses all of these factors. So thinking of the brain as a meaning-making organ, looking at the pieces of neurobiology that play a role, and the related brain structures, the reflective functioning that helps us understand behaviors as predictable, meaningful by enabling to mentalize, understand, describing people's underlying feeling states. Theory of mind is bringing in the false paradigm, mindsight as experience expectant, intersubjectivity, understanding the meaning behavior between two people that arises out of interpersonal interactions, and also the internal working models. And so this last slide is peers as auxiliary therapists. So they utilize the therapist observations, reflections, modeling, reinforces emotionally and social verbal learning. You will be able to see a copy of the slide, so you will be able to actually look at this slide because we don't really have time for it, but really showing, but leading to improvements in social emotional development, self-regulation, school readiness, attachment relationships in children, and developmental growth. And at school, home environments begin to modify also in response. And I do apologize that I did not offer much time for, do we have 2 minutes though to see if anyone has
Let
questions?
me first just say thank you to everybody who joined us and has to pop off because of another engagement. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Emily. I will stop our recording.